this is going to be my first ever unboxing because I picked out my Father's Day present this year. Saw this coming out about a month ago on Reddit, and as soon as I saw it, I knew I needed to get it. So, without further ado, happy Father's Day to me. There we go. One Lego Saturn V. So, from here, let's see if we can't take this thing out of the box, and then we will start putting it together. Alright, so this is actually a pretty good scale model for being made out of Legos, and 1969 pieces, because sure, why not? So let's see what's inside the box. One bag of parts. Oh, 10. That's a lot of bags. And more parts. Now, if memory serves, a lot of these large Lego kits use odd colored bricks for the interiors, which is why you're seeing a lot of blues and reds and greens. Ooh, I like that. It's got the letter actually painted onto the piece rather than being a bunch of stickers, which, given how terrible I am with Lego stickers, that's actually a good thing. And one more bag. And the instruction book. Look at that thing. That is... yeah, I might be at this for a while. Alright, there we go. All 12 bags laid out, all 1,969 pieces. And one instruction booklet, courtesy of Mrs. Bogey. So, there we go. Let's get started. Okay, this is the first Lego idea set I've ever built. Most of the ones have just been the normal ones, but take a look at this. You put these white studs down at the corner, and then you got to put these contraptions on top of them, which winds up looking like that. Focus. Yeah. Kind of hoping this thing is structurally sound when I'm done. What the heck is this? I know this rocket inside and out, and I do not remember this part of it. Oh my gosh, these Lego idea sets are so weird on the inside. But just to prove it, that is actually what it's supposed to look like. Okay, whatever. Here we go, first bag down. And it is vaguely cylindrical and sort of rocket-shaped, like, you know, a 3-year-old would imagine a rocket. So, we shall continue onward. Now that is looking vaguely more rocket-shaped. And the best part is, all I got left over are 2 studs, so yay, we're off to a good start. Okay, so those pieces that I built in the last picture are actually clips. Because when I first put these side panels on, you can see they're only attached down here at the bottom. Really kind of flimsy. But then you make these clips, and the clip goes on right here at the top and hooks on right up under here. Yeah, see that right there? Push it in, and now those side panels are latched on. And by the way, again, whoever printed these on rather than making them stickers, you're my hero. Alright, here we are at the end of the third bag, and I gotta say, the Saturn V first stage is coming along nicely. Some of those parts that seem pretty flimsy are actually solidifying nicely. This thing is quite sturdy. I was very worried it was going to wind up being just a display piece, and that I wouldn't actually be able to. Okay, let's cut to the chase. Play with it. There's Mrs. Bogey, who finds that immensely amusing that a grown man child would want to play with his Legos. Yeah, whatever. So anyways, third... It's not that funny, woman.
Sorry. Cut me out.
I won't. 3 bags down. Let's get started on the 4th. Oh, and this has taken me about an hour to build. Hour and 15. Able to watch an episode of the Great British Bake Off with the wife while I did it. So, there we go. Alright, here we go. 4 bags in. Whew, starting to look very rocket-like at this point. And the spare parts pile has grown. So, there's that. I'm sure they weren't important. Okay, so we built these pieces like I showed you, and now this weirdness on the inside, you actually, speaking of strange assembly methods, you actually have to hook this down onto that weird doodad to create the side panel right there. This is, I mean, these are building techniques I never thought of when I was growing up as a kid building Legos. Never in a million years would I have thought of this. But it's cool. Alright, here we are at the end of bag 5, and my beautiful and long-suffering wife has once again paused the movie to let me take a video. And this sucker actually looks like a rocket now. We still need to put on some engines, but hopefully that's what bag 6 is going to do. And here we go with the completed first stage. 6 out of the 12 bags went into this one part. And I am really impressed with how this thing turned out. It's built pretty solidly. Again, at first it was flimsy as all get out, but now that's actually a pretty solid stage. These transfer pipes down the side are a little... yeah, probably don't want to be grabbing the rocket around that part, but otherwise, pretty sturdy. The engines are actually a very nice rendition of the F1 engines. The only part of this first stage I'm not wild about is this rear portion just above the engine on the outside of the nacelle. These ends are kind of unsupported, and so they don't really mesh up all that well. See, I'm gonna have to go back and fiddle with this one to try to get the part fit up a little bit prettier. Still, I mean, everything considered, that is a pretty nice first stage. And for anybody wondering, that was about 2 to 2.5 hours of my life, depending on if you want to count the time I spent photographing it. So there we go, one Saturn V first stage. And tomorrow we'll start on the second. Oh, one little note. These up top, that appears to be how the second stage is going to be secured to the first. So that's what those are. Anyways, there we go. Now on to the second stage tomorrow. All right, so here we are, day 2 of building this rocket. We're on the second stage. And I just kind of wanted to highlight some of the construction techniques that are being used to make this thing, because I haven't just ever seen this in a Lego set before. I mean, these little doodads for holding on the panels later. You can see the studs they're using for spacers. They're using the pegs to situate it on, also that you can connect. I'm trying to do this while holding the camera. Also, you can connect those panels on later. I mean, that's impressive. Then you secure this. Now, take a look at these. All this mess just to make sure that you could connect some of the side panels and some of the other equipment. And to be honest, there's at least 2 bricks in this that I did not even realize existed before I started building it. And yet somehow somebody, because this isn't made by the Lego designers themselves, this was made by fans and designed by fans, and Lego made it into an official model. Somebody figured out how to build this so they could attach everything, and the end result is akin to this perfectly designed rocket. And even a huge fan of the space program, a huge fan of the Saturn V rocket, this is a Lego set I would probably say, if you're just into Legos, buy it just so you can appreciate the way it's put together, because this thing is something else. Alright, so here we are at the end of bag 7. The second stage of the Saturn V is starting to take shape nicely, though the shape is bizarre and extremely unrocket-like in areas. This might actually be a contender for an even stranger looking contraption than that 4-sided spiky bit behind the corrugated panels in there. I mean, and this includes a lot of building techniques I haven't seen before, pieces I just would not have picked to do the jobs. I'm clearly not creative enough to be the kind of person that's going to create a set for the Lego ideas, but I'm happy to put them together. So on to bag 8. Alright, here we go. 8 bags down, and you're starting to see the actual outside of this particular part of the rocket coming together. And this actually, now that I'm looking at it, really gives you an idea of why this thing is as sturdy as it is. You have this inner core being formed by these curved cylinders, providing an inner core, and then this outer section wrapped around it, which then locks together at top and bottom, which creates a surprisingly sturdy and yet extremely detailed surface, which, again, I'm just stinking impressed by the construction quality. So 8 bags down. Time to start on number 9. Alright, here we are at the finishing of bag number 9. As you can see, I've already fit most of those panels I just made in that last little montage. So here we go, all these little panels, and that's of course what they look like, and they snap in here, here, and up here. And that's, again, you completely encapsulate this inner cylinder, which gives you a lot of strength. And yeah, bag 9 was entirely parts to make 4 of these. That's all it was. So there we go. So here we have the interstage between the second stage and the third stage. And once again, well, that's locked in there now. You see some very creative use of some different styles of bricks and some different construction techniques, like those little hinges, to create a fairly complicated, truncated cone shape for the interstage. It's not absolutely perfect, but it's Lego, and that is pretty dang impressive. So here we go. The second stage is completed. It's kind of the inner stage up there is completed. And then we have our second stage engines with their piddly little orange stud, I guess ignition flames or whatever you want to call it. But there it is, a pretty sizable chunk of Lego all on its own. I'm actually trying to put it on and I'm having some fit up issues. All 4 of these panels bulged and popped off when I tried to mate the second stage to the first. This all seems to be going together properly, but these guys all popped off. Not sure what's going on there. Okay, took just a minute to figure out what the problem was. This is the part as I had it built and put into the rocket, and as you can see, the beige 4 stud long planks are at the top and the bottom. However, if you take a look in the instruction book, you can see that those beige planks were not all the way at the top, because those beige planks are what's causing the interference between the second stage and the first stage. That's what it's supposed to look like. So I always tell my son, count your studs, and I didn't. Whoops. Alright, so with all that troubleshooting done, that took about 3 minutes, wasn't that hard to figure out. The second stage is mated with the first stage, and I gotta tell you, that is a sharp looking rocket so far. Now, the only thing I would say is that the connection with those hinge and claw pieces in there, where those stages connect, is pretty tight. This is not something you're going to want to be taking apart on a regular basis, because it takes a little bit more force than I'm entirely comfortable with to separate the rocket. Even though the rocket is pretty sturdy, I don't think I'd want to be snatching that thing apart all the time. So, second stage complete. Took about an hour and a half to get the second stage finished. So, on to the third stage. And for another entry in the crazy construction files, see those 2 ball joints in there? Well, they, it's rolling away, are for connecting these little side panels on. Alright, you can see I've already put some of them on, and now instead of seeing the front end of the bricks, you're seeing the bricks sideways on, which is helping to create that curve. And oh, I gotta stick that piece on there a little tighter. But again, just This thing is absolutely brilliant in the way that it's assembled. It's just, even if you don't care about the rocket, if you like Lego, I think you'll like this set just for the way it's put together. And here we have one complete third stage, and this was one bag of Legos. First stage was 6. Second stage was 4. So much like an actual rocket, it gets much, much smaller the farther you go up. And here is the rocket third stage, first through third stages assembled. Okay, so let's talk about the service module and the command module. Now, this is not terrible. It's actually a pretty creative design for the escape tower. I like that. The actual service module and everything looks good, but then, yeah, that engine bell. And the reason is the way that this is attached to the fairing, and then the fairing is attached to the rocket. While everything else does come apart fairly well, this part does not. Not 100% wild about it. I do see the problem that they would have putting this together in any other method, but yeah, kind of one not so bright spark part in an otherwise amazing model. Yeah, here you can see that the interstage has to fit around that peg for the engine bell. So yeah, you got to build it that way to fit the engine in there, and also no lunar lander inside the interstage, which, okay, I get, why would you want to build a very complicated lander and then stuff it inside? But that's exactly what I'm going to try to do once I get the interstage built. First, let's finish the actual rocket itself. Okay, so after talking about the service module, here this thing is in its entirety. Just look at this thing. Look at this thing. It's an absolute monster. It is 1 meter tall, and it looks amazing. And just wow. So here are the minifigures that come with it. That little tiny guy down there at the bottom. And last but not least, you actually can fit the lunar lander inside the interstage, the shroud. So there we go. So there we have it. One gigantic Lego rocket. This was a heck of a lot of fun, and I think my total time was right at about 4.5 to 5 hours to put this thing together. This is an awesome Lego set. Happy Father's Day to me. Alright, so in the process of editing this video together, I actually realized I'd forgotten a couple things. First of all, the display of the lunar lander. This is a really sharp looking set, especially considering the scale that it's built at. And really, it looks really sharp. And you can take the lunar lander out because it is actually designed to fit within the shroud of the Saturn V. So you can take it out and set it on this little display stand, and it looks great, especially just given the scale. That's impressive. Plus, you get this cool little clear slided brick that's got the US flag, again, printed on it. No stickers. Same thing with the front of the lunar lander. Also included is the splashed down command module, which, I mean, again, when you consider the scale and the parts that they're working with, that's a really slick looking little display piece. And it occurred to me last night that you actually have some other options. Originally, I talked about how I was not overly happy with how the engine looked on the service module. That it didn't really look right, looked kind of goofy. But all you actually have to do is pull that little peg out, and the engine bell can be put right into the back end of the service module. And you can also take that command module off of the little splashdown display, and boom, you've got yourself the space variant of the command and service module right there. Also, another cool little trick. On top of the lunar lander, you have this little peg hole right there. Now, if you take and you leave in this little peg that is used to secure some of the buoyancy devices, you can actually, trying to judge distance through the camera, you can actually dock these two. Tore off the engine bell. Professional video content creator. You can actually dock the command service module with the LM, with the lunar module. You can actually dock them together, and that looks really sharp. So that is another option on how you can play with your Lego model. That all fits together. I have to believe that peg slot on the top was done intentionally. Oh, another thing, I had talked about how I was going to see if I couldn't fit the lunar module inside the shroud. So yeah, I went back through the instruction manual, because who reads the instructions, and sure enough, in the instructions was a little diagram showing the lunar module inside the shroud. So clearly it was sized intentionally to fit in there. And I really like the way that this looks together, enough that I'm seriously considering going on Bricklink and ordering enough parts to build another service module so that I can have one on the whole rocket where it's displayed up, and then have a smaller display on the side with these together, because golly, that just looks nice enough. That would be a real shame not to have that on display next to it. So there we go. All right, there's my unboxing and construction of the Lego Saturn V rocket. And if you didn't catch it, I really, really like this set. In fact, I like it so much that it's now going up in my family room, and it's going to stay there until my wife can't stand it. So, this has been Bogatir. I'll catch you next time.